is back from his exotic trip, and on Mondays, when she's available, we bring in my better half to talk about the thing that she has an abiding interest in, and I have almost no interest in, but she's now got me sort of curious and interested in this true crime world. It all goes down in a segment we call Mark's Monday Murder Mystery.
Welcome to Mark's Murder Mystery Monday.
I think it's Mark's Murder Mystery Monday is what it is.
Like to note that you got it wrong too.
I got it wrong, which is exactly true. And I usually give Kim a hard time because she doesn't know any of the franchises, barely knows my name. I'm Kim McAllister, and here's the news.
That's you say Mark's Monday.
But then I blow it after giving her such grief.
That's okay. It's new, so.
Okay. Hey, look, my bad. I'm sorry.
My bad.
All right. I misspoke. All right. Now, Courtney, welcome, first of all.
Hello.
I wonder if you could get us up to speed on all things related to this world that you are so transfixed by.
Yes. Well, we chatted last week about coming on Monday and talking about the Idaho murders, which Kim just covered, which I'll get into in a second. And then also last week, the Case Breakers, which is a group of, I don't know what you would call them, like sleuth citizens, formally put out a press release that announced that they had found, they had a confirmed suspect for the Zodiac Killer. And so we chatted about that. And then today we're going to review that as well and go in a little bit more depth around that case.
Can I ask you to speak up a little bit, Courtney? I've cranked you up all the way.
Okay. Is that loud enough?
She sounds good to me. But just
Albert told me to ask her to speak up.
All right. I'll speak up a little bit.
Yep.
So for the Idaho murders, Brian Koberger, who is the suspect in custody, was arraigned this morning, and as Kim mentioned, he pled not guilty. Now the trial is set for, I believe it's October 13th at 8:30 in the morning.
Do you have some kind of special alarm on your phone for that?
I only have
October 13th. It's going to start. It's 8:20.
I think it's that. I think it's like the 18th or the 13th.
You could just say October.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't have an alarm set, but I will be watching. It's so unfortunate. The victims' families have unfortunately received their degrees posthumously over the last month. May is sort of traditionally when colleges have their graduation. So
sure.
I imagine the last couple of months have been very difficult for the families.
So sad. I've got a story related to that actually in the next hour about victims posthumously. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this has been pushed. Generally, an arraignment or preliminary hearing happens, I think it's like 14 days after an arrest, but they pushed this 6 months. So it's just happened now, and now the trial will start in October. So part of that was one of the roommates, whose name is Bethany Funk. They were trying to get her to come to this preliminary trial, but she really did not want to. So she met with the defense team, I think in Reno, which is where she lives, because they say she has exculpatory evidence that is pertinent to the case. Yeah. But we shall see. I can only hope that this family gets some
peace and get some, quote, justice. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But you were going to, I thought, in addition, this is just happening today, which is why you're updating that. Yep. Thank you. But I'm wondering about this other thing that was breaking news in the last week as well, which is this Zodiac Killer.
Yeah.
And they've identified who the Zodiac Killer was. Now, why, again, review for me the Zodiac Killer, what the Zodiac Killer did, or why the Zodiac Killer had this infamy?
Yep. So it's a pseudonym of an formerly unidentified serial killer who operated. It's funny, people keep saying Northern California, but isn't San Francisco sort of
No, it's considered northern, but you're right. It's technically central California, but
the cases that they know that are officially attributed to the Zodiac Killer are 68 and 69. Now, this killer, he claims to have killed 37 people over the course of 62 to 69. So there are more deaths that he is claiming to have made. But this is actually described as the most famous unsolved murder case in American history. And most of the murders happened in and around San Francisco. He also wrote at least 20 letters to the media and to police and investigators, and at least 4 of those were ciphers. And the first cipher was fairly, I hate to say this, but it was easier to decode. But the last cipher was actually not decoded until December 5th of 2020.
Wow.
It took AI and supercomputers to decode that. And it has been said that...
There they are on screen.
Yeah.
By the way, cipher, they're telling me, is a ding word? Okay. All
right. It has been said that actually in decoding the last cipher, which if you go down, if you're watching, if you go down a slide, I think I have it. It's called Z340. If you go down one more, sorry. It's got... nope. I did a lot
one
of
more,
prep
one
for
more,
this.
one more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nope.
That's everything, Courtney.
All right.
Albert's saying, is it that one? No.
Yeah, it's the one in the middle. So
that one.
Yeah, it's that one.
Okay.
So it took AI and a supercomputer, but once they had his name, that was a code that helped to decipher the cipher. And I actually have the text from that cipher listed. It's really interesting. He spells paradise with a D-I-C-E, which a lot of armchair sleuths seem to think connects to gambling or other things. But you can see here some of the work that was done by a group of mathematicians, actually, for the most part, that were able to decode the cipher. But he killed 5 people. He attempted to kill 7. The first 2 people that were killed were a couple that were on a sort of lover's lane, if you will. He went up to the car. He shot the woman and the man, and that was his first murder. That was in 1968. The second murder took place where he approached another car, similar sort of lover's lane. He shot the man and woman. And he then called the cops.
This is on July 4th?
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay. He then called the cops and told them that someone had killed a couple and confessed to the crime. Yeah.
So, he confessed to the crime over the phone, but then he hung up and said, "I'm not."
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, he hung up.
The whole thing with the Zodiac Killer was that he was sort of in the face of the cops all the time, is my sense, right?
Exactly.
He was sort of smack talking the police.
Yeah, he was. He was sending them letters. He was claiming really big things that he had plans to do, bombing certain areas of San Francisco, murdering children. He never did any of that. In fact, people that were close to him said that the murder stopped in late 1969, and that's actually when he got married. So some people think that getting married and starting a life with somebody else was part of a impetus or whatever. It started his not continuing on to be the Zodiac murder. Having said that, he did continue to send letters through 1974. So he continued to taunt the police, and he taunted the police all up and down California. So in fact, in 1974, he sent letters to the Los Angeles Times.
So in total, he killed 6 people. Is that what you said?
He killed 5 people.
5 people.
So he killed 5 people. He killed unfortunately, after that couple, he killed another couple. There's
the letter. Hang on a second. This is the Zodiac speaking.
Yeah.
Like I always said, I am crack proof. If this is not obviously a cipher, I'm just reading it. It was a postcard sent to the LA Times. It just says the LA Times, the address, LA Times, Los Angeles, California, airmail. I'm just telling people who might be listening to the podcast what we're looking at.
Well, what's interesting is that some of the family members that have come forward said that they lived in a, quote, posse with him, and that he actually had a machine that created things that looked like stamps, and that none of them were mailed, that he was delivering these but making it look like they were mailed, because for a lot of his letters, they don't have an address. I mean, I don't.
Have you seen this movie that Randy's talking about with Jake Gyllenhaal, Zodiac?
I haven't, but it's a very famous movie. I think it was done in 2007.
Well, I'm a little surprised, honestly,
You know,
that
Mark,
you've listened to like 40 podcasts on this, probably.
I know. Well, I think that it, sometimes Hollywood can take a little bit of liberty with this story. So when I'm doing the research, I'm listening to a lot of investigators.
She wants the truth. She doesn't want some crackpot movie.
She's too fact-based, you're saying, Kim, to be...
she's a real
doesn't want any artistic license.
That's right. I have a two-pronged question for you, Courtney, if I could.
Let me just ask you, Albert, are the levels more or less right? Are you okay with the levels, sir? Because I can't turn her up any more than I have her turned up.
Yeah, she sounds good.
Okay, cool. I'm sorry. Now the questions, please, Kim. Go ahead.
The question, is it the bloggers or the podcasters who are saying they've identified this guy, or do the police concur? And is he dead or alive?
Oh, concur is a ding word, and that's a great question. Yes.
So apparently he has secretly been on a list of suspects since 2016. But the FBI will not corroborate him as a suspect. Case Breakers, which is a group of about 40 citizen sleuths, if you will. It's run by a journalist named Tom Colbert and his wife. They have come forward and said that unequivocally he is this gentleman, Gary Francis Post, is the Zodiac Killer. Gary Francis Post died in 2018. So unfortunately, they cannot interview him or arrest him.
That's wild. So in a sense, I don't mean to put it this way, but he kind of did escape justice for his entire life.
Yes, he did. And he went out of his way to try to make this into something really big, right? Like make him infamous, these murders infamous, through the letters and the phone calls and the ciphers and everything else that he did to keep people talking about the Zodiac Killer. He even had his emblem, which was the circle with sort of the cross through it. Actually, this couple, when he unfortunately killed this couple, Cecilia and Brian, they were picnicking at a lake. And he walked up to them and he was wearing a hood with sunglasses and like a white cape with his logo on it. I feel like if I saw someone walking up to me with that, I might pick up the blanket and run, but they did not. And he tied them up. And then this is the first murder actually where, I hate to say this, but he stabbed them and did not shoot them. Brian survived it. So Brian was able to give a physical description of the killer. And unfortunately,
Lake Berryessa is what Kim is saying it was.
Yeah, unfortunately, Celia passed. The final murder took place in San Francisco in the Presidio area.
Okay.
And he gets into a cab, the murderer, the Zodiac Killer, and he shoots dead the cab driver. There are 3 teens that are across the street that watch the murder and then watch him taking a piece of clothing and wiping down the car. So they give a witness account of what he looks like. Now, what's really interesting is when the call came into the police, it was reported as an African-American man who had committed the crime, but it wasn't. It was a white man, about 5'10", 170 pounds. And when the police were walking up to the murder scene, a white man, 5'10"-ish, 170 pounds, walked past them. But because it had been called in as an African-American man, they did not stop him.
Wow.
Yep. And so then he mailed that piece of the shirt that I mentioned that the teen saw him taking from the victim. He actually mailed that to the Chronicle with a letter. So when they opened the letter, they had a piece of clothing. They had a letter from the Zodiac. So it definitely connected the Zodiac with that murder, although it was originally thought to be a robbery.
He wasn't the best speller in the world, I'm noticing. Is that right? You mentioned it before.
Yeah.
I guess he was he was good at his awful murderous thing that he did, but his spelling really left something to be desired.
Yeah. I mean, some people think it was like a nod to an earlier serial killer who was misspelling words.
Oh, you think he was deliberately misspelling?
I think that's giving him a lot of credit, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so So it's really interesting that now they have said this. The case breakers, who are the ones that published a press release last week, who have
Right.
said that Gary Francis Post is the Zodiac Killer. They have physical DNA from him. They have received it through people that lived with Gary that knew him, and so they're asking the police to compare it to DNA that was taken at one of the scenes. There was no DNA left at the majority of the scenes of the Zodiac Killer, of the crime
What
scenes.
can you tell us about the scene?
There was no DNA at the majority of the scenes,
No
Larry.
DNA at the majority of the scenes, but he left saliva on the stamps that he licked, and so there's partial DNA.
Wow.
captured from that.
That
Yeah,
is strong.
Yeah.
So this case breakers, I think you may want to be in touch with them, Courtney. I feel that you and the case breakers play kind of in the same band, if you know what I mean. You know,
No,
you could harmonize with them.
I think that they're all a lot better than me at this.
Well, that's a good attitude to have. We could use a little bit more of that attitude around this place. Yeah.
But they
you
are
come in
a really
humble, but I
interesting
think
group.
you share the same abiding interests.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, this is actually, if you can go back, sorry. This is for people that are watching. If you go up one.
Go back one. There you go.
Gary Francis Post. So that is.
That is the Zodiac Killer.
Yes, he was arrested for domestic violence, and I think this was one of the photos from that. And then on the right-hand side, this is a sketch that was provided after the murder of the taxi driver, as I mentioned, that the 3 teenagers who are across the street gave. There's actually a lot of conversation that Ted Cruz looks like the Zodiac Killer, so that was a meme for some time that he might be the Zodiac Killer. But I do think they've.
Well, the sketch doesn't look either like Ted Cruz or the Zodiac Killer. Particularly.
Well,
I don't know, but it's tough. That's an older version of him now.
Yeah, that's an older.
So that's a
version
tough.
of him.
Maybe it was better at the time. That's kind of eerie, scary.
Yeah, it is. I can't believe it. It's
a guy who was so smack talking the cops.
Yeah,
it's amazing. It took so long, and they never really did apprehend him.
Yes, and he's claimed to kill 37 people. So there's certainly a lot of unfortunate murders that might have gone either not solved or not attributed to him. But he, as I mentioned, he stopped sending letters in 1974, and his last murder that was definitely connected to him was in 1969 with the cab driver in the Presidio.
So it's up to an official law enforcement agency is kind of what they're saying and what you're suggesting to actually make the official DNA matchup.
Yeah.
But it also sounds as though official matchups have been made sufficient to the point that he's on these lists of various law enforcement agencies.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I don't know the relationship between the FBI and the case breakers, but I have to imagine the case breakers are probably a thorn in their side.
Yeah, it's like enough with the case breakers. Right.
So I don't know how seriously they're going to take this, but we shall see.
Courtney, very well done. Kim, I and Albert will excuse the witness unless somebody has another question.
Well, I just want to let Courtney know I was thinking about you over the weekend because I found this documentary and started watching it, even though I don't usually click on such things, but I did, and I thought, oh, I get why Courtney's into this. It's called The Murder of God's Banker.
Oh, wow.
And it's from 2022, and it's about something that happened in the late 70s, early 80s, and 1982, I think was when the murder happened. And the man that was one of the main bankers for the Pope, for the Vatican, was found hanging from a bridge in London. And it goes into his murder.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Yeah,
suicide or a murder, but it's called The Murder of God's Banker, and it's a series, like a documentary series. You got to check it out.
You feel like you'd have job security with that.
Yeah,
but,
God's banker.
Yeah. I mean, being the banker for the Pope.
Oh yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
It turns out, according to this documentary, they were connected to the mob, and it was connected to this secret Masonic group. It's really interesting.
Wow, that sounds very good. That sounds very much up your alley.
I will, and I have to say, Calvin Wong, my other partner in life, he sent me so many great stories and links about the Zodiac Killer. I'm forever grateful for his support. And
Yeah, Calvin is a shadow producer.
Yes. And then
Very-
I think it was Brian who sent me a link to this really interesting series that looks kind of like a combination of The Flight Attendant and Only Murders in the Building that stars Kelly Cuoco. But to that point, like she starts a podcast because there's a murder that happens in front of her. So anyway, maybe, maybe I definitely
There's a
have to
show
watch
or
that.
movie coming up on Peacock, Lori says, about people who start a murder podcast.
Yep,
Can't
there
get to
we
it
go.
fast enough before Courtney leaves. Yeah,
I
it's-
know it's a huge, it's a huge segment. I would say in
Oh, it's
pop
extreme.
culture,
There,
yeah.
you think just when you think there can't possibly be more murder podcasts. There,
the case
five more are
breakers.
birth-
The
yeah.
case breakers were the ones who found DB Cooper. And I was listening to a podcast with them, and they were like, well, now we're not invited to CooperCon anymore. And I thought, there's an entire event that thousands of people go to just about DB Cooper.
now was DB Cooper actually found?
I think they found out who he was. I don't think he was ever found.
Yeah,
but they
he jumped-
identified
right.
like who he was.
Okay,
Yeah.
that
so.
for the next time.
Yep.
Good stuff, Courtney. Thank you for
Oh,
being
thank
here.
you. Thank
We
you so
love it,
much.
Courtney.
Yay.
Everybody, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Murder
you. Thank you,
Mystery
Kim.
Monday.
Thank you, Albert.
On the Mark Thompson Show.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.